at CBS, we had been contacted by the CIA. As a matter of fact, by the time I became the head of the whole News and Public Affairs operation in 1954, ships had been established.
What if I told you that some of the most trusted news stories from the mid-20th century weren't just justified by journalists, but by the CIA itself?
That planted story is intended to serve a national purpose abroad, came home and were circulated here and believed here.
The very foundation of media trust and journalistic integrity was quietly being manipulated by a covert operation designed to shape public opinion during one of the most tense and pivotal times in global history, the Cold War.
Khrushchev, which said that he would withdraw these missiles and technicians and so on, providing we did not plan to invade Cuba.
This operation, known as Operation Mockingbird, was more than just a strategic move by the United States. It was a sweeping campaign to control narratives, influence ideologies, and steer the collective consciousness of entire nations.
Because this would mean that the CIA could manipulate the news in the United States by channeling it through some foreign country. Now, we're looking at that very carefully.
But how exactly did the CIA manage to pull this off? And what does this mean for how we consume media today? Let's dive deep into the shadowy world of Operation Mockingbird, a story that will make you question every headline, every news story, and every trusted source you've ever known. As we explore this covert operation, we'll also take a closer look at a surprising connection with one of the most prominent feminists of the 20th century, Gloria Steinem.
Ralph, how long were you with the CIA?
I was with them 25 years. I joined in 1952. I retired in 1977.
Imagine it's the late 1940s. The world is emerging from the devastation of World War II, and two superpowers are locking horns in what would become the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union. Both nations are vying for global influence, not just through military might, but through the battle for hearts and minds.
A good many of us do not have a clear picture of what the CIA does. I think many of us believe it is an intelligence gathering agency, that it gets information, that information becomes intelligence, and then it passes it on to key areas in the government. Is that an accurate impression?
No, it isn't.
Information, as they say, becomes the new weapon of choice. This is where the CIA steps in, spearheading a covert operation that would forever change the landscape of media. Codenamed Operation Mockingbird, this secret program was designed to control the narrative in the media, ensuring that pro-American stories dominated the headlines, while communist ideologies were systematically discredited. But how did this all start? And who were the masterminds behind this audacious plan?
The CIA is not an intelligence agency. It's a covert action agency. Covert action being overthrowing or supporting foreign governments. Another part of covert action is disinformation.
The seeds of Operation Mockingbird were sown in the tense geopolitical climate of the post-war era. Frank Wisner, a key figure in the CIA and head of its Office of Policy Coordination, realized that in order to win the Cold War, the U.S. needed more than just military strength. It needed to control information.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
We do have people who submit pieces to two American journals.
Alongside him was Allen Dulles, who would later become the Director of Central Intelligence, and together they envisioned a media landscape where the CIA could covertly guide public opinion. But controlling the media wasn't going to be easy. The plan? Start small with a few influential journalists who could be persuaded or paid to write stories that aligned with the U.S. interests. These journalists, often unaware of the full extent of their involvement, became unwitting agents in a global propaganda war. As the operation grew, so did the network encompassing some of the most respected media outlets in the country.
I think it was entirely in order for our correspondents at that time to make use of CIA agent chiefs of station and other members of the executive staff of CIA as sources of information which were useful in their assessments of world conditions.
So, how exactly did Operation Mockingbird operate? The answer lies in a mix of subtlety and power. First, there was media infiltration. The CIA didn't just influence stories, they embedded operatives within the very structures of major newspapers, magazines, and broadcast networks. These operatives, posing as journalists or editors, had the power to steer the editorial direction, subtly shaping the news without ever being detected.
Well, it happens on many levels in many different ways. It could be a director of agency contact with a publisher, or it could be a lower-level agency employee with a lower-level person, or managing editor, per se. Or it could be hiring agency people, and placing them in the news organization.
Next, the CIA engaged in journalist recruitment. Prominent journalists were recruited not with force, but with incentives, money, exclusive information, and career opportunities. In return, they wrote stories that aligned with the CIA's goals, ensuring that pro-American narratives were pushed to the forefront. Then there were the propaganda techniques. The CIA was adept at crafting messages that resonated with the public. They planted stories in reputable media outlets, stories that looked genuine, but were strategically designed to promote U.S. interests and discredit communist ideologies. By framing news events in a certain way, they could manipulate how the public perceived these events, emphasizing the good, downplaying the bad, and spinning a narrative that supported American policies.
I remember speaking to the General Counsel of the NSA when we began getting information and indicating we needed to get more information. And he said to me, "But the Constitution does not apply to the National Security Agency."
In the midst of this complex web of influence, there lies a surprising connection with one of the most influential feminists and journalists of the 20th century, Gloria Steinem. Known for her role in the women's liberation movement, Steinem's involvement with the CIA offers a nuanced perspective on how far-reaching Operation Mockingbird's influence truly was.
The irony of eating caviar for the benefit of the starving doesn't escape her, but as she says, it pays the bills for a political campaign or the bail money for political activists.
During the 1950s and 1960s, Steinem worked with the National Student Association, NSA, an organization that later was revealed to be covertly funded by the CIA.
Well, exactly when did your own association with the CIA start, and in what fashion? Did they come to you, or did you go to them?
The NSA's purpose was to counter communist influence among American students, and it served as a front for CIA activities. Steinem, who organized and led various student conferences under the NSA's banner, later acknowledged her connections with the CIA, but maintained the agency did not interfere with her work.
And I became convinced that it was impossible. It was at that point that the student leaders said to me that they had in the past received funds for international programs from the CIA, and that they felt that this was important and could also be partly funded by the CIA.
This relationship between Steinem and the CIA highlights the complexity of Operation Mockingbird. While Steinem was not directly involved in spreading pro-American propaganda through traditional media, her connection with a CIA-funded organization shows how widespread and diverse the agency's methods of influence were. It wasn't just about newspapers and television. It was also about influencing the minds of the next generation of leaders through educational and cultural programs. Let's talk about the faces behind these stories, the journalists who, knowingly or unknowingly, became part of this covert operation. Names like Joseph Alsop and Ben Bradley come to mind. Alsop, a syndicated columnist known for his staunch anti-communist stance, was instrumental in spreading pro-American messages.
His column in the 50s was it reached the height of 190 newspapers, and yet he wrote like Henry James.
Bradley, who later became the executive editor of the Washington Post, also played a role, albeit a controversial one. But it wasn't just individuals. The CIA's reach extended to entire media outlets. Major newspapers like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal, these publications had large readerships and were trusted for their integrity, making them perfect vehicles for the CIA's propaganda. Even broadcast networks like CBS and NBC weren't immune, with television and radio becoming powerful tools in the agency's arsenal.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
The result? A carefully curated public perception where the lines between truth and propaganda were blurred. During the Cold War, Americans were fed a steady diet of pro-American, anti-communist content, all meticulously crafted to support U.S. policies. This influence extended beyond just news stories. It seeped into opinion pieces, editorials, and even entertainment, creating a pervasive narrative that resonated with the public. But as the truth about Operation Mockingbird slowly came to light, the impact was devastating. Trust in media institutions began to erode. People started to question the integrity and independence of journalism, a skepticism that persists to this day.
The media is being questioned unlike ever before. Candidates have targeted reporters, even news organizations, and voters are kind of struggling to determine real versus fake.
The revelation that the press, supposedly the watchdog of democracy, could be manipulated by the very government it was meant to hold accountable, shook the foundations of public trust. This manipulation of the press wasn't just unethical, it was a blatant abuse of power. Operation Mockingbird raises serious questions about the morality of government interference in journalism. The deliberate spread of propaganda and the covert recruitment of journalists undermined the principles of a free and democratic society. Yet, despite these ethical breaches, the legal consequences were minimal. The covert nature of the operation, coupled with a lack of transparency, made it difficult to hold anyone accountable. By the 1970s, the political and social climate had shifted. The revelations of various covert operations, including Operation Mockingbird, led to a public outcry. The Church Committee, a U.S. Senate committee tasked with investigating government abuses, uncovered the extent of the CIA's manipulation of the media.
Well, it's a bill that would set up a permanent oversight committee, bipartisan committee, with a rotating membership so that it would not be preempted by the agencies that it is to oversee.
Aimed at curbing such practices and restoring some level of trust in the media. However, the legacy of Operation Mockingbird continues to resonate today. In the digital age, where media manipulation has taken on new forms through social networks and digital platforms, the lessons from Operation Mockingbird are more relevant than ever. Governments and corporations now have unprecedented tools to shape narratives and sway public opinion.
I know you guys are objective over there, that you just report the news as it is. I know. CNN makes a. I know.
Was that supposed to be a laugh line?
I wasn't supposed to be, but I guess it is.
Modern social media and news manipulation, as exemplified by the Twitter files, reveals a complex ecosystem where information warfare is not just a metaphor, but a reality. The Twitter files, released under Elon Musk's ownership, revealed internal Twitter discussions on content moderation, including the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story and the ban of then-President Trump, sparking debates over free speech, social media manipulation, and government influence on content moderation.
Most supporters say that his new policies and the recent release of internal documents are needed to provide better transparency about how the company operates, particularly after controversies involving the company's content policies in the 2020 election.
These files highlighted how Twitter, under pressure or in collaboration with government agencies like the FBI, engaged in what some see as censorship or de-amplification of content, often aligning with political agendas. This has led to a broader discussion on the ethics of content moderation, with reactions ranging from calls for transparency to skepticism over the significance of the revelations, illustrating a complex landscape where information warfare and political influence still intersect. The story of Operation Mockingbird serves as a powerful reminder of the need to uphold media integrity and independence. So what can we learn from Operation Mockingbird? It's a stark reminder of the power of media and the dangers of unchecked government influence. As consumers of news, we must remain vigilant, critically evaluating the sources of our information. For journalists, the story of Operation Mockingbird underscores the importance of maintaining independence, transparency, and ethical standards. And the inclusion of figures like Gloria Steinem shows that this influence wasn't just about the headlines. It extended into the cultural and educational fabric of society, shaping the minds and beliefs of future generations. In an era where misinformation is rampant, the lessons of Operation Mockingbird remind us that a free press is not just a luxury, it's the cornerstone of democracy. By supporting independent journalism and advocating for transparency, we can help ensure that the media serves its true purpose to inform, educate, and hold power to account.
Or not to be trampling upon the laws and constitutional rights of American citizens.
If you found this deep dive into Operation Mockingbird intriguing, don't forget to like this video, share it with others. And since you've made it to the end, why not subscribe? It's free, and you can get more content like this video explaining MK Ultra, the CIA's secret mind control program.